Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/slash Tales from Tech Support. In today's episode, the largest magnet in the world. Classic case of pebcac. Security officer breaks security. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. The largest magnet in the world. Update. Please see the reply from Sean Bza below. His explanation for the data deterioration is much simpler and, honestly, makes more sense in regards to the issue the customer was facing. I did field work in the early 90s. Back then, some data centers still had VAX machines, dumb terminals, and reel-to-reel backups. Think 1960s era stock footage of computers and big disks spinning around. Those devices were old and slow and breaking down and obsolete, so a lot of them were replaced in the 1990s. My company sold and installed the replacement tape drives. This customer was porting old backups to the new backup drives. They had been one of the first adopters of computer technology back in the day, and had backups going back, I kid you not, to the late 1960s. The oldest of these backups, early mid-70s, if memory serves, might or might not port over. Even though it was out of our scope, the customer asked if our company could figure out what was going on. I, as the installing tech, did the preliminary checking, which consisted of learning how their old drives worked. It was data gathering for the guys who probably knew how this old stuff worked. This was the first and last time I had ever seen one of these old tape drives in use. The upper-level techs did some environmental checks, didn't think their storage was any issue. It was in an old, giant, 100-plus-year-old safe from a defunct bank, tested the drives as best they could and couldn't find an issue with them. We told them we couldn't figure out what was wrong and the customer thanked us for trying. Why did they need these old backups some 25 to 30 years later? This customer was super giant conglomerate that you've heard of, and they probably still have legal battles being fought from the 1960s. That is my best guess, and I assure you it is only a guess, but it's the only possible reason I could think of. Fast forward 5 or 6 years. I no longer work for my previous employer, and I was watching some TV. No idea what the show was, but it had something to do with magnetism, and I watched as they magnetized a rebar by using the Earth's magnetic field. The rebar was pointed at the ground at about a 45-degree angle, oriented NS, then struck with a hammer a half dozen or so times. The now slightly magnetized rebar picked up some very small paper clips. I flashed back to that customer and their very old, very constructed of iron mag tape storage safe, and I was damn near blinded by the light bulb going off over my head. I had to know. At work the next day, during lunch, I cold called the local office of super giant conglomerate and asked for the IT department. I got the local help desk and started by explaining, I did a service call there about 6 or 7 years ago on some tape drives. I know this is really weird, but is there anyone still there who might remember how you guys couldn't port over reel-to-reel backups to the new drives? What are you talking about? The tech on the phone asked reasonably. I gave the tech the story above without the TV show, and also asked if they still have the old safe in the data center in the basement. I think it was that bit of info that got me let me get your phone number, and I'll ask around. I thought that was the end of it, but a couple of hours later my phone rang. It was one of the admins from super giant conglomerate calling me back. He was one of the desk-side grunts at the time my old company investigated the issue. He was still with the company, but had kept going to school, got his network certs, and was now an ADMIN. And he remembered the tape drive issue. I think I remember you, he said. Were you the guy who installed the new drives? I said I was, but I no longer work for that company, but I think I know what's wrong. You've been thinking about this for 5 years, he asked, laughing. No, but something reminded me about it last night, and, I'd just like to have this checked out. It would certainly explain everything. I have a test in mind. It's fast and painless and should only take about as long as it takes to open and close the door to that safe. He asked for details and I told him. That safe is made of iron, right? I remember how everyone liked it because it was over 100 years old and could probably withstand a nuclear blast, but it's still made of iron, and for 100 years it's been sitting on a big magnet. He was silent for a moment, then said, I don't follow you. You know, if you leave a paperclip on a magnet, the paperclip becomes magnetized? Well, that safe has been sitting around on the Earth for over 100 years, and the Earth is a magnet, he finished. Oh wow. Oh wow. Pause. What's your test? I suggested he get a small paperclip, make sure it isn't magnetized, then take it to the safe, open it up, and see if they could hang the paperclip to the top of the safe from the inside. He told me he'd call me back in 10 minutes. About 8 minutes later, my phone rang. That paperclip is still hanging in that safe. I guess we need new storage. Thanks for your help, and I think I could hear the faint sounds of people frantically removing tapes from a safe behind him. Classic case of PEBCAC. When I got my first job in IT, I worked in a team supporting a government mainframe system. Our government were just getting into the idea of external consultancies doing work because they were better than the government employees. The net result of this was we were faced with an annual intake of sparkly-faced kids with degrees in geography or business studies arriving as consultants working for one of the largest global consultancies at the time. They would arrive, go through an induction for about 6 weeks, disappear to the States for a COBOL programming course for another 6 weeks, at which point they would arrive back, and you would find they were your boss. I was saddled with one who kept calling me for somewhat spurious reasons. The one that is indelibly burned into my memory was the enter key not working issue. On this day, $manager was running some user testing on the system, and the instructions were pretty clear. You filled in the test data from the script. Yes, there was a paper script, we are talking the late 80s here, and then you hit the action key to move to the next page. Note, the action key on this particular flavor of mainframe was where you would see the backspace key on a modern PC keyboard. The key just below this had a very different function, and could be mapped in the terminal settings applied when a user logged in. On the particular day, I had a large number of calls about an issue with one of our line printers. It was apparently spitting out endless sheets of fanfold paper with the same information on it. One of the users had fed the printer with 4 boxes of fanfold, and had neatly stacked the 4 boxes of output ready for collection. I logged into the system and checked the print spool. It was full with hundreds of pending print jobs, all the same size and all tagged with $manager as the owner. I disabled printing, cleared the spool and restarted the scheduler, and sure enough, jobs started to be added for $manager again. Time to go and see them. I looked round the office, spotted $manager, and went over. Immediately, I was told the mainframe is broken, a rather odd statement to come from a manager for a global IT consultancy. You would expect a little more technical detail at least. On questioning what the issue was, I was told no matter how many times they hit the enter key, nothing was happening. Everything suddenly fell in place. My next question was, have you read the user manuals for this application? I knew full well they had not. In the manuals you were told that the key labeled action was the equivalent of enter on this mainframe terminal. There was also a very handy keyboard map diagram showing the action key and also telling users that the key below the action key was mapped to print screen. I said, you've been printing the same screen over and over again. This was met with a flat denial, and $manager started to have a go at me in a very loud voice. Now, I've never been one to take crap from anyone, especially an inept, arrogant fool promoted beyond their level of ability. I turned round, went to the printers, grabbed a barrow, put the 4 boxes of wasted fanfold on the barrow, got all the additional sheets from the printer and added them to the boxes, walked back and said, yes, you have. Here are 4 boxes of fanfold along with a number of additional sheets, all screen prints from your terminal. Their response was classic, how can you prove it's from my terminal? The answer to that was very simple. Every user's name was included on the printouts, and it appeared on every single sheet. I took great pleasure in going through every single box pointing to their name over and over again. That would not be my last encounter with them, but they were shifted into a role where they had no responsibility for a team. Security officer breaks security. I worked as the tech lead in a small account of a huge corporation, and I typically handled the tech support problems within our system because I was in the office, and most of the other developers were off-site, plus I knew everything about our system. One day I received a tech support call from the top manager about how our account did not have documentation of items promoted to production since the first quarter. This isn't something I normally did, as it was in the system administrator (SA) area, but I knew the scripts, had read-only access to them, and knew how unsupported we were in that department this year. We went from a specific SA who knew our system to a revolving group team that didn't know our system. We were starting our yearly audit with an external firm on our security procedures and all sorts of other business things. Without this audit trail, we were in deep trouble and could face some big fines. A little history is needed. We had finally picked up our own account security officer, also, in charge of the standard corporate security requirements for our industry. Beforehand, our small account had piggybacked off another account. This was a finding of the previous year's audit that we didn't have a dedicated ASO. This new ASO took great exception that with our very small team that I not only wrote and reviewed code, but also promoted code through the various environments. The ASO thought that I was a security risk and came up with all sorts of scenarios in which I could go bad and corrupt or destroy the system in some way. It didn't matter that a DBA or a SA had far more access and capability of destroying more than just the system, but the backup systems, logs, etc. I was the one who was the danger. I gave the ASO our written documentation on the promoting procedures and walked them through the steps and situations that had to be avoided. All this was documented. Their major concern was that I could promote my own code to production. Whenever I or my backup promoted anything, it was logged in our version control system who promoted what file and version and when. At the end of the day, an email went out with the information on what was promoted to where that day to our ASO. If for some reason I had to promote my own code, I had manager approval and email that the ASO was included in. I countered all their arguments and wrote the whole thing up for my top manager, including my findings that we did not have strong controls over SAs, DBAs, and most specifically, managers who used their authority to bypass procedures. We had system logs showing who did what / when, and those logs and backup systems were all outside our ability to manipulate, etc. It was a secured system from our side of things. Thus, why I was surprised I had a call regarding how our account did not have documentation of items promoted to production since the first quarter. I dug in and discovered the following. The ASO decided they still didn't trust me. They wanted to change the end-of-day (EOD) script that sent email on who promoted what to include additional information that our current script didn't have. Our revolving group team of SAs couldn't change the script to his desires, so we found another account in our company who used a similar system and had them send their EOD script, convinced the SA of the day to replace the script without testing because it works fine in the other account, and the next day the ASO went on vacation. When the ASO came back, they never noticed they weren't receiving this EOD promotion email anymore. This went on for half a year. I wrote a special script that crawled through our version control, and for every file promoted to prod since the last audit, it showed who promoted versions from development up through the testing stages, including the noted details on the promotions. The report also highlighted instances of someone reporting their own code, which the noted details explained. It was easy to support that last requirement with the approval emails for those very few occasions that happened. This took care of the problem of no EOD promotion emails and became a supplemental part of our security findings each audit. I then happily had a meeting with the ASO and top manager and explained how the ASO broke protocols without any approvals, which specific items in the promotion procedure documentation that were broken, and how bad it was, and reiterated how we did not have controls in place to stop an ASO or manager from going rogue or using their authority to bypass our controls. It was a good day.